Sure. Well, good morning. Happy Friday, y'all. My name is Winsve Campos. I am 26 years old. I currently work for the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance, and a few years ago, I also am the current state representative for House District 28, the Aloha-Beaverton area, and a few years ago when I first made the decision to run for state representative, I was working as a case manager, helping folks who were experiencing houselessness get into housing, and that work was the catalyst for me making the decision to run. I had a day at work where I started out the day on the phone with somebody who by the end of the phone call knew that they were going to be sleeping outside. I ended that day with a mom breaking down in tears in front of me, asking me how she was supposed to put a roof over her children's heads when she works 40 hours a week but only makes minimum wage. And she laid out what those numbers meant for her. And I sat at my desk after she left feeling really angry and frustrated. And I thought to myself, what we need is change at a policy level. We need people that are on the front lines of the most pressing issues we're facing, but we also need people who bring diverse lived experiences and perspectives like those that I bring as somebody who grew up in a low-income household, as somebody who knows what it's like to stand in line at the food bank. I grew up in a single-parent household. We lived in a motel room until I left for college because that's what we could afford.
And I'm sorry, where?
In Bandon, Oregon. And so made the decision to run, and now I'm running again, and this time for the Senate. I've had a number of folks ask me why the Senate and not the House. The House is more fun. You know, I think we need to see more diversity in the Senate. We need to see more people that are willing to be bold. And right now, I know that after a couple of folks are no longer going to be in the Senate. The second youngest will be in their 50s. So I have been told that bringing some of that diversity in terms of perspectives, generational perspectives, would be helpful.
I'm sorry, the second youngest person in the Senate currently is 50 years old?
Not right now, but after Senator Armitage and Senator Lawrence Spence, who will no longer be there next year, the second person would then be in their second youngest.
I forget why Armitage. Did she decided not to run?
Armitage, yes, she went during the appointment, explicitly told folks that she would not run for the seat.
Okay.
Can you or someone explain the new contours of this district and how it changed?
I can explain that. It is a very rural, urban combination district. It runs from the Yamhill County border on the south all the way up to Walker and 217 on the north. It includes much of unincorporated Washington County, and it includes most of the former House District 26 and much of the Cedar Hills, Aloha area.
How far east does the district go?
It goes over to Murray Boulevard, a little bit east of Murray, slightly east of Murray for just a little ways.
And how far west?
All the way out to 219, if you're familiar with the 219.
And then just what's the registration edge?
It is 18% Republican, 32% Democrat, and 36% NAV, the balance minor parties.
Gotcha. Winsve, do you have a signature accomplishment in your one term as representative you want to share with us?
Well, I've been proud to work on a number of different things, but I will say one of the things that I am most proud of is getting Cover All People, now known as the Healthier Oregon program, through the building, largely because, mine was a competing bill, and the other bill was through the governor's office, which was pushing for $10 million. I came in and sort of said our communities need more. What it does is it expands healthcare access to those who would be qualified for OHP were it not for their immigration status. And recognizing that healthcare is community health is really critical, and we certainly have seen that in the last few years. Healthcare was one of the important issues that I campaigned on, and we got $100 million out for funding, and the plan is for after this year that it's going to go into full rollout.
So just to be clear, your bill passed, not the governor's bill?
Yes.
right? And it was a bill that expanded Medicare coverage to undocumented workers.
It expanded, so it created the healthcare system so that folks could access it. So it's not exactly OHP, but it's OHP, so because of federal guidelines, right, it's not technically that, but it is, so if they were qualified for it, were it not for their immigration status, they now have access to that healthcare.
Gotcha. Great. Rich, how old are you?
Oh man, really I have to disclose that in this interview? I just turned 68. How many times is that for Rep. Campos? I'm not sure. I haven't figured the math out there. I formerly represented House District 26, and then after that was assistant, or what was called Deputy Secretary of State, for a period of time. I've been in Washington County for about 40 years. We have a farm out in Shoals.
Kind of a farm.
We grow the table grapes for the Portland, Hillsborough, and Beaverton school districts. That's our primary crop.
Grapes not for wine. but
Not for
eating.
wine. We have seedless grapes that are used primarily in the farm-to-table school program. I served for most of my law career as a land use lawyer in various positions in Washington County, including the chair of the Washington County Planning Commission for about 8 years, both prior to and during my term with the Oregon legislature.
Have you retired?
What's that?
Have you retired from?
I am trying really hard to retire, Nigel. I have not quite retired from the law practice. I have sold all of my interest in Vial Fotheringham, but I still have a few clients, especially, I don't know if you're familiar with the Willamette water line system that's coming out of Wilsonville all the way up to Hillsborough. I've been representing some of the farmers along there that are being condemned to have the line go through their property.
That's the drinking water.
It is.
The new drinking water. Yeah.
Yeah, and Tualatin Valley Water District, which is the main water district there, tells me that they'll be getting about 60% of their water overall out of that system once it's built.
So you've already outlined the voter reg in this race. Doesn't your candidacy make it almost sure that the Democrat will win?
Well, if I didn't think I could win, I wouldn't be here. But certainly there is that element talked about constantly that if I draw off people, it's going to be drawn off Republicans. I don't think that's necessarily true.
So why are you running?
Well, I'm running primarily because I think the two-party system is broken. When I was in the legislature, from the very beginning, it was clear to me that as a minority member and a new member, I had no ability to influence legislation whatsoever. I went down there initially, Mark, to try and get some roads built. Having been on the Planning Commission and living in the rural area, the West Side bypass concept, I don't like to call it that, but that West Side limited access.
Just to clarify, if
Yeah.
you dropped your Republican registration and are running as unaffiliated simply because Republicans have no clout, so even if you got elected, you'd have no power, or is it because you've got some fundamental disagreements with the Republican Party platform?
Well, that's where I was going. This is the latter. Absolutely.
It's the latter.
It's the latter.
So tell us what issues you have with your former party.
Well, I'm a valid fiscal conservative, but on a lot of the social issues, we're just not looking at the issues in an appropriate way. And that doesn't mean I agree with the way that the Democrats are looking at it either. But understand, that's not why I'm running. The reason I'm running is because the way our system is set up now, with the majority party choosing leadership and leadership choosing committee chairs and deciding which bills get heard and what happens at the legislature, there's no way that we get good, thoughtful, nuanced conversation over most of the bills that come up. And many bills don't make it up simply because they're not the one that the team needs to make sure they win on to continue their power in the legislature. So that's why I'm running.
Okay.
Kimberly? Is it Kimberly or Kim?
You can call me Kim.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm Kim Rice. I'm running for the Senate, District 18. I'm a 52-year-old woman. I am a wife, mother, and educator. And I decided to run for the Oregon Senate because I believe the Oregon government has ceased to work for the citizens here in the state. I believe in the last 2 years with the government overreach that we've experienced has taken our government away from representing our people here in the state and also from participating in our government. Our Constitution has a legislative branch that is supposed to not only represent the people's voice in Salem and be that part of our government, but it's also supposed to involve the people with participation.
Can you give us just a minute more about your bio?
My bio, so my husband and I grew up in this area and we've raised 2 daughters in this area. We both went to University of Portland. I grew up across the river in Battleground and then moved here when we got married. I've been in education for 27 years. I've taught in 3 different states, so I've actually seen what education can be like
Where
in other states.
what have
I've
you
taught in Oregon, Washington, and Colorado.
What
grades?
I've taught elementary school, so
And where-
lower
what-
grades.
What school districts in Oregon?
I've taught for Portland Public Schools. I've taught for North Thurston Public Schools in Olympia.
So what school have you taught in Portland?
In Portland, I worked at Chief Joseph Elementary School in Arbor Lodge, North Portland.
You were a, what, 4th grade teacher there?
I was a Title I teacher for math and like a full-time or part-time substitute teacher in the building. That's where I did my 1 year of student teaching, and they hired me there.
So when you say a Title I teacher, is this like an ESD program?
Is it what?
I'm not sure, what does a Title I math teacher mean?
A Title I math teacher, Title I school is a school that gets additional federal funds to help students make achievement that are just below grade level. So I was doing special special.
So you weren't teaching a class, you were pulling kids out of class and working with them?
I was in and out of class, so it was both. That was my very first teaching job. The rest of my teaching has been in class, running a classroom.
And when's the last time you were teaching?
Last October when I was removed from my classroom. Because I did not agree with the mandates that were being pushed on education teachers.
For masking, COVID?
For masking and for vaccine.
What school district was it?
I work for Beaverton School
And
District.
did they fire you?
They separated me from my classroom and put me on unpaid leave for 90 days. And then in
So were you
February...
at home, or did they put you in a rubber room, or what did they do?
No, they just
They
completely...
just stayed at home?
They basically said, we're separating you from your room because you didn't comply with our mandates.
And what happened after 90 days?
February 1st, they gave me another letter saying that they would invite me back to teach in the new school year because they didn't want to lose good teachers. But they would, I would have to be fully vaccinated to come back and teach in the fall.
Wait, so they were angry because you were unvaccinated?
I think they were angry because...
Was it a vaccine thing or was it a mask thing?
It was, I didn't comply with any of the district requirements for the mandates. I believe
So are you not
they were
vaccinated?
against my human rights and my civil rights.
Are you not currently vaccinated?
I am not currently vaccinated because I've already had COVID.
How long ago?
Is this experience what drove you to run for office? I mean, is this sort of the...
It is the stripping of my human rights and my civil rights that has gotten me involved. It is taking me away, the experience of taking me away from 27 years of serving students and families that has gotten me fired up to come to Salem.
Why didn't you get vaccinated?
Because I didn't believe in it, and I didn't believe that I needed to prove my religious beliefs to my employer.
You didn't believe that the vaccines were effective?
I didn't want to participate in something that didn't have years and years of background on it. I didn't want to participate in something that I couldn't for myself prove that it was safe and effective for me. I wanted to retain my bodily sovereignty
And did you say there's a religious component to this as well, or was it purely on the science?
It is a religious component.
Christian,
Correct.
is there something in your Christianity that says you shouldn't be vaccinated?
I believe that I have the decision and my God-given right to decide what I put in my body, especially if it's an experimental gene therapy injection. I don't believe that anybody gets to make that decision for me.
How long ago did you have COVID?
How long did I have COVID?
How long ago did you have
Oh,
COVID?
January.
Of this year?
Yeah, my husband
Okay.
and I both had it. Yeah.
Got it.
All right. What's the first bill you'd introduce in Salem?
Well, because I've been involved in education and because of the state of what our education has become here in Portland, or Oregon, a lot of people don't know that we're 44th in the nation in terms of academic performance. We used to be number 2 in the 60s, and it's been a decline. As I've lived here the last 8 years and been back involved in education here in this state, I have seen the decline of education as well. The emphasis is not on academics and learning, and so that is why I believe that we have fallen. So I care about the future of Oregon, and we need to be concerned. We have over 500,000 children that are in the public
So
school
what bill would
system.
you propose?
I would propose that we undo the damaging and the nonsensical removal of our high school graduation requirements that Brown implemented. That's what I would like to do. I also don't agree, it's unacceptable that she's removed learning standards for people of color. So I believe all students can achieve and they can thrive, and that they need not low bar standards, they need high rigorous standards. So I'm very concerned.
So raising standards would be the focus
Absolutely.
of your
Yeah, well,
education.
getting back our graduation requirements would be great. Do we want to have a populace that can compete in the job market, that can be productive citizens? Do we want to have Oregonians that compete in the country and in the world? You know, taking away our standards and lowering the bar for everyone is not the answer.
Okay.
Rep. Campos?
Well, I just submitted 22 LCs, so
What's your favorite one of those 22? What's the one that's most important to you?
you know, I've got one that is around food insecurity. What it would do is it would establish a restaurant meals program here in Oregon. It has been done in several other states, and it would expand. What it would do is expand SNAP benefits so that those who are elderly, those who have disabilities, and those who are houseless would be able to purchase hot foods with their SNAP benefits at restaurants that would opt in. And of course there would be it would be a collaborative thing with businesses, with restaurants that would want to engage as a part of it. There would be incentives for them to
This
participate.
bill would allow you to use food stamps in restaurants, is that what you're saying?
Yes, specific
Certain
restaurants. Yeah, certain restaurants.
That does that require a federal waiver?
No, so that's why it would be a restaurant meals program. So, I'm sorry, I responded to your question without actually listening to it.
He's asking would it be a federal waiver because of the federal component?
So it does. There does have to be work with the federal government there, right? So we can't like fully expand SNAP benefits right now. Like if you have SNAP benefits, you can't go and use, like if you want to buy food from the deli, right? You can't do that with your SNAP benefits. And so this is sort of like a way in which to establish a way for folks to have access to hot foods, because we know, and specifically for these populations, because we know, one, like if you're somebody who's experiencing houselessness, you might not have somewhere where you can cook food. If you are somebody,
The restaurant lobby would be in support of this.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I would think the restaurant.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that I'm excited about it, is it's that one that can be collaborative, that can be beneficial on the business end, as well as supporting vulnerable
So if
Oregonians.
passed, this would allow you to use food stamps at McDonald's?
It could be one of the places. So it would begin, let me clarify that it would begin as a pilot program, because we have seen success in some states and not so much in others that have like rushed in. Gosh, I can't remember the state.
Would McDonald's have to opt in, did you say? Anybody would have to opt in. Would a restaurant would have to
Yes.
opt in? Okay.
Yeah, so there's no like requirement, but that's part of like part of the positive part of like supporting businesses is that there would have to be state funding for this to happen. And you know, one of the things that we know that food insecurity is an issue, but one of the things that is burned into my mind is shortly after in 2020, probably July, I was driving home and I drove past Aloha High School where there was a long backup line of cars that were waiting for food boxes, and so I am looking forward to, that's actually only one of 3 food insecurity bills that are on my list of things that I want to work on, but that is one that we tried a version of it during the short session. I had a number of folks that were both from, so we had organizations like AARP, Hunger Free Oregon, Disability Rights Oregon. We had a number of folks that were excited about this. We also had a number of folks excited in the building, and certainly have been asked if it's something we can bring back and get through.
Great. Rich, first bill.
Well, I still want to build roads, but I will tell you that my first effort in the legislature to get colleague support would not be a bill, it would be a rule. We're often told that the most important vote a legislator makes is the very first vote. Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be leadership? I've been studying how to address this partisan polarity issue now for the last 5 years, and I'm convinced that the Nebraska model, which requires a
Unicameral, one body?
it's not the unicameral that makes it unique, Mark. The thing that makes Nebraska unique is the fact that there are no party labels when you go to the legislature, and your leadership is elected by secret ballot off the floor. Your committee chairs are all elected by secret ballot off the floor. Committees are appointed by a committee on committees rather than the Senate president in the case of Nebraska. Those issues are really at the core of getting us to a point where the legislature begins to set an example for the rest of the society of reducing polarity and not increasing the separation that we have right now.
So the
why would it be a rule?
The legislature has some quirks. For instance, the caucus meetings, in theory, should be public because they represent they are in effect a public meeting, but the practice has been for them to be private. So could you change this at the ballot, or would you have to change this within House and Senate rules?
The House and Senate rules would be the first place to attempt to change.
But I'm saying if you are unable to get elected or unable to convince your colleagues to do this, could you do this at the ballot?
I think you could.
Yeah.
As I've looked at this issue, it's similar to open primaries, all of those issues around how we elect and how our legislators operate. It's not constitutional. It's all a matter of either rules or legislation that's been adopted over the years.
You've also been working on open primaries, is that right?
I have.
Yeah. So how's that going?
Well, we've made some progress. We've got a ballot measure that looks like it will go forward in 2024. I would frankly like to see us have a legislative referral before then, and would want to work on that when I got to the legislature. But the reality is, of course, right now the parties are pretty polarized, and both parties are disinterested in reducing the opportunity to maintain or get into power.
Rich, do you think the Secretary of State's office ought to be nonpartisan?
Absolutely. In fact, I attempted while I was Deputy Secretary.
So does that suggest that your experience working for the Secretary of State's office when you were there was that it was a partisan office?
I will tell you that we tried very hard to be nonpartisan, but it is almost impossible given the circumstances around the legislator and the fact that our budget, even though it's supposed to be an independent office, the audit office, etc., our budget was controlled by the legislature, made it difficult not to have partisan influence over that office.
Gotcha.
But it ought to be a nonpartisan office, by all means.
Kim, so just to be clear, you pro-life?
Yes.
Okay, and then in your opinion, was Joe Biden duly elected as president?
I mean, what I would like to say recording that topic is that I believe that it's okay for people to have questions about what has happened in our elections. And I think people need to be, to have confidence in our government. They need to be able to make sure that their vote counts. And so I think we can't, you know.
No one would dispute that, but what's the answer to my question?
I am not sure.
You're not sure if Joe
I'm not.
Biden was legally elected?
I'm not sure.
Are you sure that 4 years prior Donald Trump was legally elected president?
I'm not sure about any of it because
So you're not sure that Abraham Lincoln was legally elected president? You're not sure in the sanctity of any election ever held? in
I have
American
heard
democracy?
people say that we've had some problems with our election systems, and I've been, you know, concerned about that as a
But
voter.
you want
But
to
I
run now, though? I mean,
Excuse me?
Aren't you throwing yourself into it? Aren't you, by running, aren't you signing up to participate in a system then that is
I want to
unproven?
make sure I'm running because I want people to feel confident that their vote counts. I'm running to ensure that our elections are safe and secure. I'm running because I believe in our keeping our elections
And you believe they're
safe
not
and secure
currently secure?
and keeps our country free.
And you believe they're not currently secure?
And I
And you
believe
believe that the voting system is not currently secure?
I believe that the voting system is not currently secure because I heard our state attorney general admit that the voting machines can be hacked.
You know, we heard that from another candidate, and I called the Attorney General this morning. And she said she's never said that. She said, first of all, she doesn't have the expertise to comment on that, and she's never said it. So this appears to be a Republican talking point, because we heard this from, what's his name, Niemeyer, just the other day, he was running. Where are you getting this? Where did you get that information?
From Washington County sources.
The same sources who suggest that there's never been an election in this country that you can count on?
I'll tell you that I'm on a team of nonpartisan citizens that are just investigating irregularities that we have found in our voting system.
And you found some.
I haven't seen the data. I just know that somebody on our team requested data and that the Secretary of State or the election office gave him the 2020 data.
All right.
But it's in a court hearing right now.
So,
Can we move on?
Yeah.
Wednesday, how many doors have you hit? How many doors have you knocked on?
Between primary and general?
Yeah.
It's a good question that I should know the answer to at the top of my head. A few hundred?
Rich?
A couple thousand. And that's just in the last 6 weeks.
How
What
many
was the
doors? How many
question?
doors have you knocked on?
or are you not?
Total about 3,000-ish doors.
So what's the biggest issue in your experience that people are talking to you about?
People are really worried about the homelessness problem, the mental health problem, the ride-alongs I've done with the Washington County Sheriff, the sheriffs I've talked to as well. But I've just had people telling me at the door that they can't let their kids play outside in certain parts of Aloha because of the homeless camps that have crept in there. And you know, that there doesn't seem to be anything that can be done about it because they're allowed to camp on the public land. I've also had people tell me that the mental health is such a huge crisis and parents are not even able to get an appointment in with a provider for 6 to 8 months when they're in an immediate crisis. So just being such, you know, an expensive state that we pay all these taxes into the state here, it just seems odd to me that we don't have the infrastructure to help people in mental health and help people with this. I haven't seen it improve.
What's the biggest issue that you're hearing about from voters?
Housing, and let me clarify, a few thousand, definitely lowballed that number. This is what happens when you don't prep for that question.
Okay.
Should I go
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
housing issue?
Yeah.
Folks are concerned. I would say most recently hearing about the increase, the possible 14 to 15% increase that they might see in their rent. They're concerned about folks who are houseless and how we are supporting folks. They are concerned. That's the biggest issue.
So I forget, were you in the building when the rent control bill went through?
I was not. No, 608.
What is your day job?
My day job, I work for the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance.
That's right, I'm sorry.
Rich, what's the biggest issue you're hearing about?
Well, I kind of lead with, hi, I'm Rich Weil, the nonpartisan candidate, so I hear a lot about partisan polarity, but other than that, it's certainly going to be homelessness. A big one, certainly in the last couple of weeks, and it's gotten more, is Major 110. I was in a home last night where a couple had lost their daughter to a fentanyl overdose about 6 weeks ago, and were asking me, what is this Major 110 all about, and what's really going on? I've had a lot of conversations with Kevin Barton, the DA out in Washington County, about it, and he says it's what he heard about also when he was running, and I'm hearing the same thing.
Rich, are you supporting Betsy for governor?
I am supporting Betsy. Okay, absolutely.
She just got the Portland Tribune endorsement. All right, Aaron.
Great. Would you repeal Measure 110?
The reason why we adopted 110 was a good reason. The idea that we need to address the fact that being addicted to drugs can get you in the legal system and ruin your life, and we ought to do something about that, was a good idea. I wouldn't use the term repeal, Aaron. I would use the term modify. We need to modify 110 so that we still meet the goals of 110, but I think we need to address the fact that without holding folks accountable for drug use, we're not likely to get them to even shift over and use the benefits of 110. Right now, you get a ticket, you can ignore the ticket, throw it in the back seat, you don't have to worry about it, and you don't even bother to make the call and get the benefits of 110 that have now been finally ramped up by OHA.
Well, bouncing off that, how would you modify it?
We need more teeth to the part of it where it actually supports folks who are in need. But certainly the voters told us this is something that they want to see addressed. And so, more investments in that piece of supporting folks. And also one of the bills that I am hopeful, if elected, to work on is looking at the contract processes between nonprofits and community-based organizations and agencies. One of the things that we know is, speaking to Measure 110, is how that rollout went. And, some of these contract processes make news, some of them don't.
Measure 110.
I would repeal it if I could, or if not, I would modify it, because I think the focus needs to be on getting the people services, not just making a phone call to somebody, but really actually getting people help. That's where the money needs to be going.
Whose endorsement are you most proud to receive in this election cycle?
Stand for Health Freedom is a national organization, also Oregonians for Medical Freedom.
Great.
Most proud of those.
And what's the largest campaign contribution you've received?
How much of
I'm
it?
sorry, well, yeah, from whom have you received your largest campaign contribution?
I have not received any campaign contributions to date, but I believe Oregonians for Medical Freedom is giving me a campaign
So you have no
contribution.
campaign budget? Are you self-funding, or?
I've just been getting grassroots support, and I have been self-funding. I've invested into my own campaign. Stand for Health Freedom gave me an interview and endorsement that they're going to be putting on their website, just because they're endorsing so many different candidates across the nation that are standing up for human rights and civil rights. So they, they weren't able to give me the money. Crime Victims United is looking into giving me some money, as is Oregon Right to Life. But I think they're looking at races that they feel might be more winnable. Yeah, yeah.
Same
That's okay
question.
for me though.
Planned Parenthood PAC of Oregon and Pro-Choice Oregon, largest contribution was through this full election cycle, $20K from the Oregon Trial Lawyers Association.
Rich, same questions.
I'm grateful for all my endorsements, but I gotta tell you that I think the one that speaks the most and probably is the most meaningful to me was one from Jeff Barker, who was Representative Campos's predecessor in that House district, a Democrat. I became friends with him when I was in the legislature, and he both endorsed and provided a little blurb from my voters pamphlet, and I really appreciate that. My biggest campaign contribution actually came from my old law firm, which is a collection of a bunch of very diverse political folks, but they got together and gave me 10 grand. I will tell you that this has been an interesting cycle for me. Lobbyists don't want to give money to a nonpartisan candidate, A, because they don't think we can win, but B, because they tell me all the time, why would we want a bunch of nonpartisans in there? It's way harder to lobby a whole bunch of people than it is to lobby the leadership of a party. And so I haven't had any significant, I don't think I've had any lobby contributions.
Yeah, it'd be a nightmare for them. It's like herding cats.
Exactly, and they confess that that is the case.
On a similar note, could you point us to a place in which you have demonstrated independence from your party caucus?
Sure. The issue of roads has been brought up, and so I will say that I am not, unlike much of the party, supportive of all of these transportation projects that are being worked on. I have concerns with the interstate bridge replacement. I have concerns with the Rose Quarter. I have concerns with I-205, and that's largely because we know that the revenue, that we're in a place where we have an issue with revenue when it comes to transportation, and we are looking at spending billions and billions of dollars on these projects. I actually voted no on House Bill 3055, which was our big transportation infrastructure package. There were some good things in there, but one of my biggest issues is that right now when we talk about the issue of transportation, it isn't coming right along with tackling our climate goals. And certainly as somebody who represents a district where I hear on the doors, and I've talked to other colleagues about this, about what they hear on the doors, and folks don't hear it as much as I hear it. Folks want bike lanes, folks want sidewalks. We've got TV highway where we've got bus stops that are dimly lit, where you have to walk quite a bit of ways before you get to a crosswalk. And so, I think we need to make sure that we have the revenue before we're saying, hey, we're going to spend these billions and billions of dollars. And also we should be taking a look at how we're spending money when it comes to transportation infrastructure. I have other things, but I will stop there.
Great. A place where you have differed from the Republican Party.
A place where
Where you have a different point of view from the Republican Party platform.
Well, I would say that where I differ from the Republican Party platform is that I'm coming to revitalize the voice of the people. I'm coming in to revitalize that in the party. And we don't have enough of that on our side in Oregon. And I feel like the people need to be represented in Salem, and it shouldn't be about how much money you have. It should be about, not being a lifelong politician. It should be what the founding fathers intended, that it's a representative government. So I feel like with my background in education, I could bring a lot to the party and strengthen education for all Oregonians.
It's not really fair of me to ask you where you would differ from your party because you do not have one. But I would ask you to, we asked this at the beginning and you answered, but I'd like more specifics, where you break with Republican Party orthodoxy given that you have left that party.
a couple of examples of where I broke from Republican Party when I was in the legislature as a Republican. I sponsored Tobacco 18. That wasn't very popular with the Republicans. And
Remind us what that bill did, please.
that lowered the age where you couldn't buy tobacco to 18. So,
You wanted to make it easier for people to buy tobacco?
no, harder. So 18 up, at the time, it was, I'm sorry, I said tobacco 18, tobacco 21.
I was gonna say, that makes
It
more
was
sense.
between
Yeah,
18 and 21.
that makes sense.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right, yep.
I confused you. I confused myself. Yeah, it was called tobacco 21, and it raised the age from 18 to 21.
That's a good example.
Yeah. But the one that I got the most heat for,
And I'm sorry, did you succeed?
oh yeah, we got that bill through.
So if you're 20, you can't buy cigarettes in the state?
No, not right now.
I don't,
Yeah.
And how about in other states? Are there some states where you can buy?
I think there were about 30 states that had gone up to 21.
And you
but-
got that past Mark Nelson?
He was gone, but.
He was gone by then.
Oh.
Yeah, Mark wasn't around. It was controversial though. There were some Democrats
Oh, yeah.
even that were,
Yeah.
that were having a hard time with
With
it.
the
Margaret
fees
Carter
or-
opposed it actually.
That's right.
And Margaret Carter was on the payroll.
I think that's right.
That's
I think Nigel broke that story.
Yeah, I think that's right. But the one that I got the most heat for was the closure of the boyfriend loophole. I was on the
Closure of the boyfriend?
boyfriend loophole, the gun bill that said, okay, we can take guns away from those that are convicted of domestic abuse if they're married, but if they're just living together, the law doesn't apply. And so that was the boyfriend loophole, and we closed that in 2017. I was on judiciary, and actually it was a day when not everybody was there, and my vote passed that out of judiciary, and I'll tell you what, I took a
How many
lot of heat for
Republican
that
votes
one.
on the floor did that get?
Oh, I think there were 3 of us maybe, myself, Parrish, and Bueller.
Well,
is
and
the one
then
that-
the gun lobby went after you. You had a primary opponent the next cycle, as I recall.
Yep.
It was vicious.
Yeah, it was, that was a very, very tough vote to take, but I could not in good conscience not vote for something that made absolute common sense, so.
Are you a gun owner, just a matter of?
I'm a gun owner, and shoot squirrels in my grapes all the time, so.
What do you use for that?
20 gauge shotgun.
Oh, yeah?
I'm not good enough with a 22 anymore. I'm not
Doesn't that
good-
destroy the grapes also?
Oh, no.
They're high quality grapes.
I'm a better shot than that.
All right, everybody.
Today, I would say that the positions on the big steal of the election, that's just makes no sense to me whatsoever. I've seen no evidence that there was any level of fraud that would have made any difference whatsoever. And I can tell you, as Deputy Secretary of State, I actually audited the 2019 election, and Oregon, maybe 2 ballots out of 2 million that were bad. It's just not a problem. So.
Can you explain ranked choice voting with multi-member districts in a haiku? Just kidding.
I can. If you don't want me to.
Sure. This is an opportunity for each of you to ask one of your opponents a question if you like. Start with you.
Okay. I'd like to ask Wednesday about why she voted yes for the ag overtime bill that's put so much strain and economic stress on the backbone of our economy here in Oregon and our
And can you
food.
explain what this bill would have done?
So basically, the ag overtime bill that was passed basically requires farmers and growers to pay their employees
Overtime.
overtime beyond a 40-hour week, but they've already, paid.
And there had been an exclusion for ag workers, and this removed that exclusion.
And basically, I spoke with a farmer, a couple.
I just want the question.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so in other industries, we pay folks overtime. This was one of those things. We know that those who work in agriculture, that many folks are brown and black, that they're folks that are part of the BIPOC community. So what we know is that this exclusion in agriculture of not providing them with overtime is part of the inequities that we have seen in a lot of our systems.
Okay?
Would you like to ask one of your opponents a question?
Sure. Rich.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I was reading this article the other day. Gosh, I don't remember where I read it. I think it might have been the Capital Chronicle, where one of the issues that was brought up was around the right to abortion. I have seen online that a few years ago, one of the National Right to Life organizations identified you as like a champion for them. But in this article, you sort of gave like a middle of the road response, but there weren't a whole lot of details, and so I just wanted to hear more on your thoughts around that.
Abortion is one of those issues that unfortunately has been turned into a football for the two teams to use, and I think that's very unfortunate. I have personal views about abortion. I have adopted a number of children and have strong views. However, I recognize that my neighbors, for the most part, support a woman's right to choose. I doubt seriously that we are going to have this question come up before the legislature while I'm alive again in Oregon, but if it were to come up, I would simply hope that we could have a real nuanced, meaningful conversation about whether we want to be at the extreme, which we are now, or whether there's some other place that most of us as brothers and sisters in this state would like to be. And my only commitment to that would be that I would want to support the very nuanced conversation rather than take a specific extreme position.
Rich, would you like to ask your opponent a question?
Well, I'll return the favor, Rep. Campos. I appreciate the question. Would you support a bill that opened voting in the primary to the approximately 42,000 voters in Senate District 18?
Open primary.
That's essentially an open primary question. That are now registered non-affiliated.
I've actually previously publicly said that I would definitely support that.
Great.
I think we should have folks that are we should be able to make democracy as accessible as possible.
Great. Last question, and it's our fun question for the morning. The fun question is, if the world were ending tonight and you had one meal left, what one food would you want to have on the menu? Rich, I'll let you go first on this.
French onion soup.
Good choice.
Love that stuff. Haven't had it in a while.
Campos?
Gosh, I think I would say chilaquiles.
Oh, nice.
Specifically my dad's.
Oh, yeah?
I'd say my mom's chicken Parisienne recipe.
Very nice. Thank you to all of you for your time.
And it is
We appreciate
lunchtime.
it.
Yeah.
It is lunch.
Nice to see you all.
Yeah.